Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to the Showing Up to Your Life podcast and YouTube channel. Art Burns here, you there. Hope you're feeling as excited as I am today. And I shouldn't say that because I don't hope that you're feeling excited, because if there's nothing to feel excited about, then why would you feel excited, right? And there's no benefit, there's no right way of feeling, right? And so excitement is something that either, arises or it doesn't, right? And that's okay. Right. So pardon me for saying I hope that you're feeling as excited as I am, because that's not, what I hope is I hope that you're feeling happy, or at least that you're feeling the conditions in which happiness can occur. I hope that you're well. I hope that you're free from suffering and free from fear and anxiety and apprehension and insecurity. I hope that you're expressing love for yourself and forgiveness for yourself and forgiveness for others. And I hope that you're able to accept forgiveness from others if that's appropriate. And most of all, I hope that you feel loved. And I just want to tell you that. So thank you. Thank you for hearing me on that. That felt good. I hope it felt good to you too. And and every word of that was true. I sincerely do hope that for all of that for you. Every one of you who is watching this, and I'm speaking directly to you. And so I hope that that's true for you today. And if it's not, well, that's okay too, right? My hope for your well-being is the hope for a compassionate hope for the end of your suffering, okay? But that is not to say that you're supposed to feel something, right? If you're unhappy today, it's okay to be unhappy, right? I'm just saying that I hope that the unhappiness comes to an end at some point, right? Because I want you to be healthy. I want you to be well, okay? But being well does not necessarily mean that we can't be sad, right? It doesn't mean that we can't feel conflict. It doesn't mean that we, conflict within us, right? It doesn't mean that we can't be struggling with something, right? We can still have an overarching wellness or well-being and have moments of difficulty and struggle and strife. But in those moments of difficulty and struggle and strife, I invite you to take some time and return back into your body and just be with the struggle. Just allow it to be for a few minutes. Allow yourself to be in contact with it. Allow it in. Invite it to sit down at your table and have a cup of tea with you. Because when we can do this, when we allow the suffering and the difficulty and the struggle, when we allow it to come in, most of the time we can then allow it to leave, right? But when we sit here and say, no, 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 I can't be feeling this struggle today. It's not okay. I don't want this. This is terrible. No, 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 no. Well, then what happens then is that the struggle and the suffering, it is never going to leave in that circumstance, right? It's like I often say to my clients, when I'm first talking to somebody, like in the first meeting, this is usually something that I say because I'm explaining meditation, how I'm explaining that, meditation and mindfulness is not about stopping anything. It's not about stopping the thoughts or the emotions or the sensations or anything like that. And to illustrate this, I often say to people, if I tell you right now, and I mean you right now, if I tell you in this moment, don't think about a pink flamingo, I am almost sure that a pink flamingo popped into your mind, even just very briefly, right? Even if you got rid of it very quickly, it was there, right? And so even though I told you don't think about a pink flamingo, you thought about a pink flamingo. That doesn't mean you're wrong. It doesn't mean that you did something bad or anything. What it means is that we have less control than we think we do over our thinking, our emotions, and our sensations of our body. Right? Now, that said, ironically and paradoxically, we also have more control than we think we do over these things. And that's where it gets very confusing. And that's where we're going to have a conversation. Like, I can't convey that in one episode. I'll try to do another episode on that because that's a very interesting sort of topic to explore. But the important thing to remember right now is that yes, the thoughts, the emotions, and the sensations are going to arise. They are going to. And there's little that we can do to prevent them from arising. What we can do instead is, as I mentioned a few moments ago, we can allow the thoughts, we can allow the emotions, we can allow the sensations in all of their whatever it is that's happening, and all the difficulty and all the chaotic power that they seem to have, right? If we allow ourselves to experience them, but do so without the identification, right? Without the feeling that, that I'm somehow creating this and this is my fault and I'm the bad one for making this happen and I'm going to suffer my own consequences. Because at that point, almost every single time that somebody says that kind of thing to themselves, it's completely off base. It's not true. It's not accurate. It's not helpful. It's not motivating. It's not any of these things. Even though it feels that way, right? It does. And I get that. And that is part of what I wanted to talk to you about today, right? So I had a note in my little black book here, giving new meaning to the little black book here. Married at 52 with 2 kids. I don't need that old black book anymore. But I do need this one, because this is where I create all of my little notes and all of my little thoughts and my observations. And this is where I do the planning for these episodes. And so today, and most of my episodes at this point are planned. I think I'm like 2.5 weeks out at this point, so like, because ideas come to me, I just jot them down on the next available slot, so today's topic, I wrote the note like at least a week ago, right? So sometimes I write a very detailed note about what I'm going to discuss on a given topic, but sometimes not so much. And today was one of those latter times where it's just simply one word that I wrote in my book, and that word is perfectionism. And so what are we going to do with that, right? And so, well, it really does tie into what I'm talking about here, right? When we talk about perfectionism, first of all, let's just discuss what perfectionism is, right? Perfectionism is a sort of attitude that we have, or a kind of, let's call it an attitude. I think that's the best word that's available to me right now. So it's an attitude that we have that is basically, it's pretty self-explanatory. It's saying that we believe that everything needs to be perfect, right? Now, there's a lot of, and this can apply, of course, to, everything needs to be perfect at the dinner party, right? Or everything needs to be perfect for my son's birthday, or everything needs to be perfect for this meeting that I'm going into, right? Like, it can be all of those kind of things, right? But more often, what we're talking about when we're talking about perfectionism is more of an internal, sort of part of our internal dialogue, right? That says that it's not good enough unless it's perfect, right? And so this is really interesting to me. And again, you all know that I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a psychiatrist. Okay, I'm a coach, right? I am not here to talk about the meanings and the the history of what you've gone through and help you to heal from that stuff. But what I am here to do is I'm here to take the here and now and moving forward and giving you tools which can stabilize you, which can allow you to live life more productively, more fulfillingly. And in that sort of mode of operation, it offers you the opportunity to then heal, right? So in a lot of cases, and almost, in every, let me put it this way, in several of my relationships that I have with people in a working relationship, they are also have a relationship with a therapist or a counselor, whether it's something that they did therapy or counseling previously to working with me, or they're concurrently doing it, right? And this is a beautiful sort of combination of modalities. It really works, right? Because again, when you're going through therapy and you're going through counseling, it's really mostly about understanding and in that understanding, healing, right? So that you can move forward in your life, right? Without the pain, without the suffering, without the chaos or the rigidity that is going to impact your ability to be a functional member of society, right? Whether that's a functional member of your family, a functional member of your social network, a functional member of your workplace, right? These are the things that can be impacted by childhood trauma, various other, pathological, psychological issues, right? Which, by the way, I mean, trauma alone covers something. I mean, it's got to be somewhere 90-something% of the people in the world have experienced some level of trauma, so there's no shame in seeking out help. Okay, let me just say that very, very clearly, because you are not the only one. Okay, there are so many people around you who are struggling with things that you have no idea about, right? We have no idea the things that are impacting us or impacting others, very, very deeply, right? And a lot of times, we feel like, okay, I'm the only one who's struggling like this, right? And I've got to just hold myself together, but everybody else has their stuff together, right? Everybody else is okay, and I'm the only one who's not, right? Well, if you stop and think, maybe they're all just holding it together the same way you are, right? And so where does perfectionism come from? Right? Like what, so perfectionism, again, to me, in my opinion and my understanding of it, right? Perfectionism is about, that I have to be perfect, right? I have to say the right thing. I have to do the right thing. I have to wear the right clothes. I have to have my hair looking perfect. I have to, play the song perfectly on my guitar. I have to be a perfect parent. I have to be a perfect, insert your job here. I have to be a perfect, if I'm going to, be a bike rider, I got to be a perfect bike rider. I got to be a perfect tennis player. I got to be a perfect swimmer, right? This is the idea that many of us hold, right? And I mean many, many of us, right? Like it comes up all the time. It's true for me. It was true for me for most of my life, or all of my life, really, up until the last 10 years, right? And it's true for several people with whom I get to work and I get to help with this, right? And it comes, where does it come from? That's the question. Right? Now, of course, again, I'm not a psychologist, so I'm not looking, and when I say where does it come from, I'm not saying like let's delve deeply and figure out where the trauma happened and all that kind of stuff. I am not trained to do that kind of work with you. Okay, and to do that work without the proper training is irresponsible. Okay, so I am not going to be irresponsible with you. Okay, so please understand that that's not what I'm here to do, right? But I am here to help you to maybe understand the impacts of it, right? And so when I say where does trauma come from, I'm speaking more in a generalized sense. Not where does trauma come from, sorry about that. Where does perfectionism come from? I'm speaking in more of a generalized sense as opposed to a specific sense of a trauma. Like let's trace back and find the trauma that started all this. Okay. Now, I'm doing a lot of studying, and so I think like I can certainly help to talk about some of it, but I just want to be very clear. I want to stay in my lane. You know what I mean? So when I say where does perfectionism come from, right? What I mean to say is who is judging your perfectionism? And that's a really important question to ask. And this is the question that I was asking myself not too long ago to try to, understand my own, again, past perfectionism, because I've learned tools to not be a perfectionist anymore, right? Like I am no longer feeling that way, right? Which is great. Believe me, it's a beautiful way to feel when you can give yourself the leeway, give yourself a little bit of slack when it comes to your own personal performance in this world, right? And you can allow yourself to forgive imperfection, right? Life is a completely different experience once you take this kind of attitude, right? Of abandoning the attitude of perfectionism and replacing it with the attitude of support and self-compassion. Right now, I talk about that a lot here, right? But again, getting back to it, so perfectionism, in my own experience, right? And of course, I've told you all about, the other day I shared some very, very, deeply personal stuff here on this podcast and YouTube channel. It was really hard for me to do that. Okay. And as you know, I am not someone who's shy in front of the camera and I don't have a problem talking about things. I'm not easily embarrassed or anything like that. It had nothing to do with any of that, but it was pain, right? And it was exposing this like serious weakness that I feel like, or not a weakness, but a fragility, right? It was exposing a fragility that I feel, in the aftermath of my own personal trauma, right? And so for me, that was really, really hard to do the other day. It was very difficult. Okay. But I did it. And I want to take a moment here just real quick and thank everyone who reached out and supported me in this, because I did get, there was a couple of comments on YouTube. I got a couple of emails, and I just want you all to know, everyone who reached out, I so appreciate you. I mean, really, I do. And if you ever need to air out, your own trauma, even though I'm not a psychologist or a counselor or a psychiatrist or a therapist, I can listen to you. That I can do. Right? I can't advise you. I can't medicate you. I can't do any of that, but I can listen. And I am here to listen to you if you need to talk. All right? And that goes beyond the coaching and the money and all that kind of stuff. If you're struggling with something and you need just somebody to talk to, well, I am here for you. Okay? But let's get back to, again, like, where does this idea of perfectionism really, from where does it arise? And so I've really taken a lot of time recently and tried to explore this question for myself, right? Try to understand, my own sense of perfectionism and where did it come from? And the thing that I come to is this idea that I'm being judged by someone, right? That somewhere somebody is going to determine whether I'm doing things well enough or not, right? And so who is that person, right? Now, for some, and this is, I mean, not untrue for me either. Like, I grew up in a very, very, very sort of strict-ish Catholic family. It's weird. We were all like, they were all very, very strict Catholics on Sundays, 6 days a week. Maybe not so much. But my grandparents, though, for instance, both grandmothers went to church every single day. Right. My maternal grandmother actually was ordained somehow by the church so that she could actually travel to people's houses who weren't able to get to church and administer the Eucharist, right, which is the biggest sacrament of Catholic religion, right? And so that's the environment in which I grew, right? And yes, there's a lot of that feeling of an all-knowing God who sees everything and judges you, right? Now, there's some kind of underhanded stuff that the Catholic Church has done, and they've admitted to it, right? They admit to the fact that they created this concept of hell, right? And that they were really trying to scare us all as little children, so that we would adhere to the church and, give our money to the church and all that kind of stuff. I don't want to get into a political thing here, but that is a reality. Right. That, and this is something that I was talking to somebody the other day about, is that, even if you do believe that there is that all-knowing, all-seeing God that is seeing everything you do, everything you think, everything you intention, everything, right? Even if that's true, aren't we also taught that is a forgiving God? and that is a God who understands. So even if it is that, is it really true? But I think it's not that for most people. I think it contributes to it. I think the idea of the all-knowing, all-watching God is contributing to the idea of perfectionism, right? But I think it goes a little bit past that. I think it has much more to do with the kind of thing that we call the ego, right? And when I say ego, what I'm referring to, and there's a lot of different kind of sort of ways of looking at ego, right? But when I say ego, what I mean is this mask that we wear. Right, and we do, right? We grow up thinking that we're supposed to be this certain person, right? Now this comes from both the church and the parents and the grandparents and all that stuff, right? We've come to this idea of what we think is acceptable, right? But it's what we believe people want us to be in order to accept us, right? And this, yes, it comes very much through when we talk about the church, doctrines and dogma and the way in which, the church brings us up this way. And I'm only speaking as a Catholic, so I don't know how other religions are with this, right? But yes, that is definitely part of it, right? The construction of that ego can very much include that church, right? Because that's part of your, sort of structure of your worldview, right? And that matters, right? But it's not the whole thing, right? And in a lot of cases, and again, this is something that can really be helped with, well, therapy for sure, but also journaling can help this, right? If you're comfortable and you feel secure and safe to kind of look back and see, but if you have some heavy trauma in your childhood, I don't recommend that kind of thing until you enroll in working with a professional, okay? Because it's deep and it's dark and it can be very, very scary, okay? And it can be dangerous. It really can be. And so I want to just be responsible here, okay? But as a matter of, the kind of, in the here and now, right? Like without understanding where that sort of perfectionism is coming from, like who is it that you feel like you need to please, right? Without understanding that so much, maybe we can just accept the fact that there is something that you feel you need to, there's somebody out there that you feel you need to please. And oftentimes that somebody is right here. Okay. And so what do we do about this? Okay. Now I talk about self-compassion a lot, right? And I talk about how self-compassion, or at least I mention when I say, oh, self-compassion is known to relieve depression and anxiety and stress and perfectionism, right? Like I always mention that, right? Because it's part of it, right? And so and it's not just me that says that self-compassion helps a great deal with perfectionism, right? This is the professionals. These are the psychologists and the therapists and the psychiatrists whom I study and I hear it from their voices, right? And I read it in their written words, right? And so let's do a little bit of math, right? If you feel that you are constantly being judged, right? Well, what you're really doing is you're constantly judging yourself because you feel like you have to, maintain some sort of bar so that everybody else in life will accept you, right? Well, what does self-compassion do, right? Self-compassion is about you accepting yourself. And in that acceptance, it's about you becoming your own support system. It's about you becoming your own best friend. It's about you becoming the one who you can always rely on, right? But if we feel at the same time that, oh, I gotta be this, or I gotta be that, or I gotta be this, or else it's just not worth, my life is not worth living somehow, right? Well, then you can't do those things, right? You can't be your own support and also be beating yourself up because you're not doing something perfectly, right? And then let's just talk for a moment about what perfect really means, right? Like perfect is not something that is attainable even, right? Like just think about it. Like I said before, like, the perfect song, right? Or playing the song perfectly. That doesn't even really mean anything. Because every song, every time you play a song, you're interpreting that song, right? And so unless you're trying to be a robot or something, and so I mean, sure, in some classical music, there's when you have 40 different instruments all very intricately playing together to create a whole system of music, well, then that's a little different, right? Because every instrument has to play their exact part exactly on time with the right level of inflection and all that stuff, or else the whole song is not going to work, right? But that doesn't apply to somebody sitting playing a guitar, right? Like that's, and even in a band of 5 people, it doesn't apply, right? Like it's not that precise, and it doesn't have to be that precise in order to be beautiful music. In fact, some of the greatest music out there is very imperfect. And the imperfection is what makes it so beautiful. So there's no such thing as playing a perfect song. There's no such thing as dressing perfectly, right? What does that mean? There's no such thing. There's no such thing as saying the perfect thing. There's no such thing as doing anything perfectly. It really doesn't exist. And so the reason I bring that up, and this is very, very important, right? But only something that you can really contemplate through the lens of self-compassion, right? Because the thing is that if we can't achieve perfection, but yet we're always striving for perfection, then what's left, right? Shame, because we're always failing, right? If we're always trying to be perfect, and yet there's no way to really be perfect, then we're necessarily always failing. And I think that's part of the reason why we do it. Again, not a psychologist here, but I think that's kind of what's happening here, right? We're kind of feeling as though if we keep punishing ourselves and keep telling ourselves how bad we are, how imperfect we are, well then then we're always going to have that shame to come back to. And again, that's just my hypothesis. I could be completely off, and I'm sure it doesn't apply to everyone, right? But what I do know is that practicing self-compassion, right? Understanding that there is no real perfect, and it's okay to never be perfect because there is no real perfect, right? Like that is something that will open you and free you to be you, to not be this mask that you show the rest of the world, right? That's the idea, that we can come back into our authenticity through self-compassion. Because as I've told you before, there is nobody in the entire universe who is you. And that's what the universe needs. It needs who you really are. It doesn't need this mask that you think you're supposed to wear. Now, we have to live with the consequences of everything we've done in our lives. Yes, that is true. But the reality is that even with all of your failings, all of your foibles, all of your mistakes and misguided decisions that you've made in your life, and all the people that you've hurt and the way you've hurt yourself and the all of it, it's you. And that's what the world needs. Because there's only one of you. There's only one. Nobody else is exactly you. Nobody. Not biologically, not physiologically, not emotionally, not intellectually. And so when we're engaged in perfectionism, we're blocking that authenticity. We're not allowing ourselves to be authentic. And authenticity, as I've told you here just the other day, is so essential to who we it's essential to being a functioning member of society, a functioning human being. Forget about society, just to be able to be healthy and make decisions in your own best interest requires authenticity, because authenticity is your intuition. Right? Authenticity is that thing that says, no, I don't want to go to that thing tonight. I want to stay home and read a book. And I don't need to force myself because some people are going to say that I'm not perfect or whatever they're going to say. Right? If they're not going to accept me for who I am, well, then, I don't need them either, And I know that can be a scary thing because, well, what about my friends? What about my family? I can't lose all these people, but I promise you that if you become authentic, if anything, your friends are going to become better friends. You're going to connect more deeply to your family. You're going to feel more connection to everyone around you. And you're going to make new friends. I promise you. Because your authenticity is sexy AF. And it is beautiful, and that's all there is, and that's all there ever needs to be, is the authentic you, with everything that you've been through, all of the ugliness, all of the horrendous stuff. It's okay. We've all got horrendous stuff, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful in its imperfection. So the imperfection is what makes you human. That's what connects you to all of us out here. 7 point something billion people on this planet are all imperfect. There's no such thing as a perfect person. The person you see on TV, say, oh my gosh, that's the perfect person. Well, you know what? They go home and they drink themselves to sleep. Or they have so many, howling, voices in their mind that they take medication, right? Like you look at, pick any one of them, but let's say Robin Williams, right? Here's a guy who was literally the epitome of happiness, right? Like when you looked at him, like he was, there was nothing but giddiness and joy. Right. So many of us probably looked and, oh man, Robin Williams, he's perfect. Right. Maybe a little overweight, maybe a little, something. But he's like close to perfect. Look at the guy. Right. And we all know the truth now. Right. So how many of the people who you see in your life, who you feel are perfect, like even not people on TV, but people in your life, the people who you look at and say, oh my gosh, if I could just be like that person is so perfect. Look at all they have going on. Look at how well they have their life together. Look at how well they're functioning, whatever it is, right? Well, I guarantee you that if you could get that person to really sit down and open up to you, you would find they're not nearly as secure as you think they are. They're not nearly as put together and as perfect as you think they are. Not even close.